hits the road. Hard talk meets great music. Monday to Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. on Net Radio. Taking you above and beyond.
Since time began, has been inflicted time and time and again by man against fellow man. Yet man wouldn't learn from history. It makes him more violent, producing deadly weaponry with nothing but evil intent. So the war could never be over, peace will never be seen, long as man in his quest for power keep destroying fellow human beings. Fellow human being, I'm telling you, nobody, oh nobody, when you really think of it, nobody wins a war, because the agony of defeat will linger, nations still hating one another and superpowers, they're looking for more power, as long as violence and aggression still dwell in the hearts of man, brother. Cannot be won. No, the war will go on. It cannot be won.
Well, good day to you, everybody. It's good to have you here inside of the Drive Time Exchange with none other than Tony Fraser. We're happy that you're here with us this afternoon. And, of course, we are going to enter into some really great and bold discussions. Tony Fraser, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Sir Charles. How's life going?
Well, I could complain, but you know what? I will not be so bad. I will just leave it as it is. Life is pretty good.
And, one more likely than not, nobody's listening, so you may as well not.
And that is that nobody cares.
Yeah. We all have our problems, but that's a hell of a prophetic calypso you start us off there with, man.
Yes.
Yeah. And before that, in the news, we have another tragedy somewhere in New York with ships hitting bridges and all of that.
Yes.
Pastor Dotton, it looks like end times are really with us.
Yes, I will concur with that.
Yeah. Difficult times ahead. Yeah, so what we want to do, we want to talk about those difficult times and situations that we are having here in Trinidad and Tobago. And sometimes, and I'm sure Pastor Dotton will agree with me, sometimes we think these things started yesterday, but they have been going on for a long time. Criminal behavior getting perhaps more and more ruthless, more and more inured in the society from all angles, and we seem incapable of being able to root them out. There was a prime minister who talked about knowing who Mr. Big was, and we still do not have the information on Mr. Big. So we are attempting to chat a little bit about those problems, the crime problems in the country. And Pastor Clive Dotton is no stranger to Trinidad and Tobago. He has been in the social life of Trinidad and Tobago for a few decades now, involving himself in all kinds of matters to do with criminal activity, to do with spirituality, and so on and so on. So we're going to hear from him this afternoon. We also have with us Dr. Dominic Dos Santos, and he did tell me he might be a little bit later. Sir Charles, I don't know if he has come up yet.
No, he has not yet. But as soon as he gets here, I'll let you know.
Right. He did say that he was moving from one place to the next, so that he might be a little bit late in coming in. But we're going to have him and we're going to talk about him when he comes into the program to formally introduce him. As I said, Pastor Dotton of the Seventh-day Adventist Church needs no real introduction. He has been around, involving himself in the matters of especially young people who are getting themselves involved in criminal activities and so on. It must take a lot of energy and courage and mission, Pastor Dottin, for you to be so involved over so long a period of time.
Well, I want to start off with Tabakit Composites School.
Okay, it seems as if you need to boost your volume a little
All right,
bit. You're not coming
just
across very loudly, so do a little jigging around of it. Let's hear how you sound now.
yes. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better, but if you could go up a little more, that will be even better.
All right. I hope this will
Yeah,
provide
this sounds much better. Yeah.
Yes. So what I'm saying here is that my last school in Trinidad, I just went to a school in St. Lucia. I'm in St. Lucia now.
Okay.
And I could tell you off the back foot, there are schools in this country, both secondary and shockingly primary, that has recruited young people. All right. Young people have been recruited in these schools. And recruited for what? 6 and 7. So 6 and 7 is now apparently a marketable product for other countries. Now, the Trinidad Express ran a whole full-page expose, double page that is, in terms of 6 and 7 in London. So I would just like to say that perhaps CARICOM could watch and see what is the reason for the massive success. Now, before I put on this laptop I have here, I went with one of our pastors to a particular place that is infested with gang activity and drug activity. I had a chance to see some of the guys who are actually involved, okay? So that you would know that St. Lucia for several years were matching us per capita in terms of murders. That may not be something we are aware of, but that is a fact. So I was not shocked by what is taking place there. So that you have that situation where there are prominent gangs in Trinidad who are recruiting young people. A senior pastor told me in a certain Caribbean country, he was by the beach in one of the Eastern Caribbean islands. And while he was there, a guy came up to him and told him, "You want to be in 6?" He said, "What 6 you talking about?" Going on the book of Revelation, 666. He said, "What 6 you talking about?" He said, the gang from Trinidad. I am in this country and I'm recruiting adults today. Yesterday, I was recruiting secondary school students. When I went to St. Kitts, okay, a few months ago, I found the same thing. Now, I haven't been to many secondary schools in St. Lucia. My first secondary school will be on Thursday. But I should tell you, I went to several secondary schools in St. Kitts. I met with the National Drug Policy Coordinator who arranged town meetings for us. And I spent a whole week in certain areas that were infested with drugs. And I went to several schools. And by the way, the guys in the school showing you the 6 and 7 sign. So that it appears rather than getting the problem solved in Trinidad, the gangs have become so powerful that they're now regional icons. And that is something we should not, ignore what is taking place.
Pastor Dottin, just clarify for our listeners. Is it that the six gang is centered in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, it is. 6 and 7 gangs are centered in Trinidad. Now, there's been an evolution that most people don't know about, because really 6 and 7, you remember that murder outside UWI where 4 people were shot and killed? 6 and 7 were involved in that. And sometimes they are partnering, and that's something I want to come to Sometimes they are partnering and sometimes they are warring against themselves. But I think the kind of successes they have had regionally and beyond the region, okay, we don't know. I cannot tell you with authority what alliances are being formed with 6 and 7, all right, and Venezuelan, Colombian gang members who are in Trinidad. Let us not fool ourselves about that. I pulled out a girl, who was with a guy, and who was a gang leader and a drug dealer, and I'm talking about in Trinidad, South Trinidad, all right, and he had what I call tactical support and security support from a soldier in our Trinidad and Tobago regiment and also a police officer in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So this is a very complex web that we have to try to dismantle, and we're going to have to try to dismantle it with a lot of courage. All right, that is what we will have to do. Otherwise, we will not succeed. You are muted.
Yeah, Tony, your mic is muted.
Right. Can you just repeat the last 30 seconds or so? We went off a moment, so we didn't hear that last part.
Okay, let me just say that it will take a lot of courage to manage this situation, because you just referred to a murder. I think I heard reports of a murder in Wallerfield. The person obviously was shot, and so the bodies keep dropping in Trinidad. So we have to understand. I cannot say definitely that the Latin American, Colombian, and Venezuelan gangs are teaming up, all right, with 6 and 7. I cannot say that. I don't know right now if 6 and 7 need to team up with anyone, given the success they're having locally and internationally.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pastor Dottin. And we now pleased to have with us Dr. Dominic Dos Santos, who recently made a presentation in the far off, deep south of the country. And I got in touch with him through a colleague who was part of that. And Dr. Dos Santos is somebody who worked in the Ministry of Education at one point in time, very much involved in youth activity, and he's going to tell us something about that activity and how it went with young people and so on and so on. Dr. Dos Santos, thank you very much for joining us. And what Pastor Dottin was just telling us about, well, if I could summarize it, about the 6 and 7 gangs in Trinidad and Tobago, and he's been recently in St. Kitts and St. Lucia, noting that there is a spread of the gangs into the region. So when we're talking about criminal activities in Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, Grenada, etc., I presume that kind of activity has been spread throughout the region. What is your experience, sir?
He's muted.
Dr. Dos Santos, your mic is muted. You need to unmute your mic.
Okay.
I think I just did.
Yes.
Yes, we are hearing you now.
Yes, sir? No?
Yes,
All right.
yes, you can start.
Thank you so much. All right. Okay, good evening, all. And I'm really excited about the discussion this evening because in terms of my observation, I would agree with Pastor Dottin that it is not just region-wide, it is worldwide. And all nations are affected by the existence. And especially when we take into consideration that criminal element that exists within it. And at the core of the thing is a series of patterns that I'm seeing developing even in the region. Within recent times with Haiti, especially, you would see a kind of format, a kind of design that is just absolutely amazing. And we have to be paying attention to it because we are creatures that have over time developed the capacity to mimic patterns that we have seen. And once we get wrapped into pattern seeking and survival oriented, then it is going to flow. Because all of us want that. All of us want to be able to belong. All of us want to be able to identify with something or somebody. And that being a human factor will feed into the formation and maintaining of gang philosophy and gang attendance and gang involvement. So that is where I am on that for now.
Yeah. What, gentlemen, what are the things that are driving this criminal surge and has been doing so for the last 25, 30 years? Now, I'm not saying, and I'm sure that no one will dispute the fact that criminality in Trinidad and Tobago, like elsewhere in the world, did not start yesterday, did not start 30 years ago. It's been a feature of mankind, if you like, but there has been a kind of intensification, and as both our panelists are saying, a kind of sophistication to the patterns of criminality over the last, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years. Every time you think you could settle on a period, you think about it twice and you say, well, you know, Boise Singh and Bolan Ramkisoon existed in the 1940s and 50s, so that you have to track back a little bit more. But what are some of the modern causes, Pastor Doughton, for this intensification of criminal activity?
Well, people tell you, Pastor, listen carefully to me. We have an issue where we have to bring back the family. And I just passed through, well, as I told you, Dr. Dominic wasn't here when I said it, that I'm in St. Lucia right now. Today I was carried to certain spots. If you go to View Fort in St. Lucia or Auger, you would feel you're in Laventille. The same squalid conditions. And I want to come to white collar crime because we just finished an election and millions were spent. So I'm going to come to that in a short while. But I think when you deal with the young people, you will find the DNA of a lot of their involvement. All right, especially when you talk about blue collar criminality, the absence of fathers and sometimes the absence of fathers and mothers. Now, I am chasing after a particular guy. I wouldn't call his name in St. Lucia here. He's 14 years old, and he's staying with his grandparents. And the church has observed a little instability in his life. Now, people like him are prime targets, all right, for gang and gang leaders. What I wanted to say just now about 6 and 7 was the evolution from ISIS and Rasta City. So I just wanted to mention that in passing. Okay, so the gangs are evolving, and as you said, they're evolving in complexity. I am dealing in Trinidad with some gang members, and they're the 3rd generation gang members. So while we talk about parents and absence of parents, you have this intergenerational thing, all right, where grandparents involved in drugs and gangs, parents involved, and grandchildren involved. I mean, I hope nobody would mind me saying it. The queen of cocaine in Arima, if you observe some of the killings in Arima, that is a spin-off of that queen who was shot and killed. And in retaliation for that killing of that queen of cocaine in Thames Street, 4 people were wiped out. You know, nobody has been charged for that. 4 people were wiped out. So we have the intergenerational strength of the gangs. So what should be a tool to fight, all right, the gangs has become actually an instrument supporting the gangs, which is the family. So that is one. Secondly, it is quite apparent that we hardly have a politician in Trinidad who would like to see an end to not just blue-collar criminality, but white-collar criminality. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I am looking with bated breath to see how this new government operates in terms of that, because generally, when I hear politicians talk, they really mean blue-collar criminals. Fellas saying, you know, he's hearing a plan to wipe out the gang leaders and to wipe out the fellas. They're talking about blue-collar criminals. I haven't seen any plan to deal with the the hierarchy, the fellas at the top, the billionaires who pour a lot of money into election campaigns. I haven't heard that. So that is something that, to my mind, is a free fall. Those fellas could almost do what they want once they pour money into election campaigns. And I don't know about you, but when I looked at the television and saw the repeating of ads over and over, I saw a huge level of redundancy. You know, I mean, I got sick of ads. You know, that is what that doesn't come free.
It doesn't come cheap at all.
Media houses, all right, have shares in this whole gang business. That's something that we have to approach carefully and cautiously. I want to put this station in no legal problem, but that is a serious issue. The other thing is that the Williams meant well when he set up the junior secondary system and the shift system. Dr. Eric Williams meant well, but that backfired bad. I taught in Barataria, what is called Barataria North Secondary School. I taught general science there. And I can tell you, I saw the seeds of this thing coming at us. For 5 hours, a lot of young people who on the morning shift were free in the evening shift, and they got involved in all kinds of activities. I don't think we have a dream for certain hotspots to change from the ghetto style. I think we don't have the gumption to do it. I haven't met one, all right, politician who I would say is committed to risk his life to solve that. I haven't seen it. Not only that, I am working feverishly in Tanapuna. And I can tell you about one family where I helped a guy for 3 years. I adopted the whole family with the Tanapuna Estate Church. And that guy was killed by being shot in his right eye, right? And now what we have is one of his siblings involved in the extortion racket. That sibling hasn't even reached age 16 as yet. So you have to deal with him. Then you have to deal with an abusive situation. All of that in one family. So it strikes me that we have got to look. I have made a call for it, to have a national adoption program for teens in crisis. I feel that's the only way to go. All right. Barring that, we have to call in the foreign powers to take over Trinidad. Because where we are going, Haiti is looking at us right in the face.
As a serious thing, Pastor Lawton, it make me shiver for a moment. Dr. Dos Santos, if what Pastor Lawton is talking there about is parenting, about social development, about community activities, and so on. Sometimes we hear about the economic circumstances. Economic is a big word. Financial circumstances of families and so on, that young people are going out to earn the bread for the family. Is that a reality? You've been involved in the secondary school system and so on. Give us an appreciation of what is happening at that level.
I think there's this assumption that poverty feeds gang and criminal activity. I do not really subscribe to that, because I myself came from a very poor setting, okay? In the sense that there were 9 of us growing up together in a very small house, and I would have seen my own father go through challenges, go through difficulties, and we were not on the end of things to say that, well, poverty is going to kill us. What it did, it provided the momentum for personal development. And to me, I'm thinking, just as Pastor Dutton is saying, the absence of fathers and absence of mothers and so on leaves the youth in a spot where he has to learn through difficulty. But when we really look at difficulty in its sense, it tends to give the human the drive to want to achieve, the drive to want to go and to do better. And when things come too easy as a result of gang involvement, or as Pastor Dutton is saying, is yet to see, to see the blue collar crime, and even by extension white collar crime being eliminated. The truth is, it's big business. So you find that the youth who could find an easy way to get an extra dollar or find an easy way to be invested in. If we do not have proper mechanisms within the family to enhance that, what is going to happen? The child is going to look for it, and it is going to be provided by the gang leader. It is going to be provided by the big daddy around the corner. It is going to be provided by somebody who does not have good intention. And unfortunately, being in the Ministry of Education for several years, I've gone into the school environment and found young children, hear me out on this, dancing on top of a table. And the dances that they're doing is what they saw home, is what they saw mommy do, is what they saw daddy do, or it is what they saw the neighbor do. And it is that if we don't put systems in place to address family involvement, real family development, and I'm not talking about family planning by itself, but in terms of the disciplines in parenting, the discipline structures for children, then we are going to have Haiti knocking on our step. Just about 2 months ago, right in San Fernando, I live in San Fernando, and right in San Fernando, one evening, my wife and I, we were just relaxing, and we were hearing this commotion outside. So we peeped, and what was amazing was to see a bunch of young men. Some of them, not so young. They had to be middle-aged in some instances, and they had these little pellet guns. They're supposed to be toys, but some are black, some are gray, some looking like authentic weapons. And they're shooting the gel pellets, right? And it was a mass running through the streets in San Fernando. And I'm saying, some of these guys had to be parents. Some of these guys had to be fathers and in their communities, yet they are leading a group of other younger men through the streets of San Fernando. And I'm wondering, where would this finish? And when I looked at it, it looked like one of the pictures for me from Haiti. When you look at it, you see all these little men, and I'm calling them little men, with these weapons in their hand, and they are saying to another group, "Oh, you come down, let me sort all out, let me mash up the place." And I'm saying, okay, we have to now put a cap on that kind of thing and recognize that what we're doing is developing patterns that the next generation will copy and make better. They will increase on those patterns and make those patterns more effective. They'll replace the toy guns with real ones.
Yeah. Both of you are speaking about families and about parenting and so on. There must be a recognition that there are parents and there are parents, and there are families who can, you talk about 9 siblings and so on, or 8 siblings and yourself, and the parents there must have played a significant role in being able to cull these children together to come to some kind of reasonable understanding of the world and their place in it and so on. But then there are parents who are really not parents. There are 17-year-olds and 16-year-old girls and boys who are having children, and they have no background to deal with that. So how do we get behind all of those situations to inculcate the kinds of values that are required to move young people away from where they would naturally go? Both of you.
Personally, I feel, Tony, that part of it is also the church, that the church itself must be more willing to go into the community and recreate and allow a safe place. Becky Bailey is a doctor, a psychologist, and she developed a system that she called conscious discipline. And in looking at it, she emphasized that if a child is able to feel safe, then that child will connect. If the child connects, the child would learn. And if the child learns, he could solve problems. What is happening around us is that, number one, children don't seem to have a place that is safe. And just given the news alone, the news coming in, we no longer feel safe. For me to take a taxi, I had to look left and right and ask the taxi driver, a few questions before I actually enter the taxi. So it's not just the child, but I'm talking about the whole society. We no longer feel safe. And I heard the Homeland Security Minister mention that, things like we need walls and we need gates and we need cameras. And like Pastor Dutton, I'm waiting to see where this is going. Because if we do not feel safe, we will not connect. And if we don't connect, we won't learn. And if we don't learn, we won't solve problems. Or we might solve problems in a different way. So I really feel leading towards social development is an emphasis on the family structure. And the church has a responsibility to step in and to provide that safe space, all right, so that people could connect, so that people could learn, so that people could solve problems in a real way and an effective way, without picking up arms and ammunition, without joining gangs. I could actually connect with someone that will be good for my welfare, and that can be provided. It can happen on a national basis.
Pastor Dottin.
I want to rush into what Dr. Dominic said. It's the first time I'm meeting him, and I'm very happy to meet him. Always online. I'm sure we'll meet when I come back from St. Lucia.
Yes.
But I am one of the proponents that feel right now where we are, the first instrument of socialization that should move the ball forward is the church.
That's correct.
I mean, he and I agree on the other issue of people hiding behind poverty and say it's poverty that brings us where we are. I think we use that, and the young people use that as an excuse to get involved in crime a lot of times.
That's right.
I grew up doing it for myself. Now, so I feel this issue of safe spaces, fantastic. The other thing I want to say, all right, is that, Frankie's restaurant, right? That was my cousin owned Frankie. And he died last year. I mean, we were close like that. He was like a father to us. Our father died when we were teens. And Frankie used to tell me, because he traveled the world, he'd say, you know something? You hardly have drug-free spaces for youth. If you go to a party and it's alcohol, it's ganja, maybe cocaine. So that in addition to what our erudite friend Dr. Dominic said, we also have to provide drug-free safe spaces for young people. Now, I'm here in St. Lucian last night while I was speaking. There was a whole outburst of music. It was around 9 o'clock. And I said, but wait, tomorrow is school. How we could have a community party that go until midnight with young people there? They ain't going to school after. So I think the community has to share responsibility. But I feel when it comes to restoring fatherhood and motherhood, the church has to be the first, which means the government must recognize that. Because the church can't do it on its own now. Leela Ramdeen, I'm sure we know about it. Catholic Social and Justice Commission. We're a major community group that is led by a Muslim. And let me say this, all right? The church has got to wake up and smell the roses, because no one church can do it alone. So a plural society must be seen as a strength. Part of the problem in Trinidad is that the politics divided and we're racially divided, and we never want to admit it. We never want to admit it. But when I say the church being involved, I'm talking about the United Church. I'm not talking about the assemblies alone or Catholics trying a thing. And Leela wrote me and said, well, with the Adventist Church, I got a message 3 days ago, mind, teaming up with the Catholic Church in terms of certain initiatives. I said, sure. All right, I have to convince my local folks to move it, expeditiously. So that I am saying we have got to see plurality as a strength. And the church cannot just be a place, and I'm not blaming the church for where we reach, but I'm saying we have to play a more proactive and aggressive role in dealing with this issue. And the government, the other thing I want to say is school ministry. School ministry is too archaic, all right? Different churches, we have got to do a lot of training. Now, Patrick Manning had a vision for school ministry. Because a lot of the things happening is in the school it started in. The gang fights, the school wars and all of that. Why I mentioned Tabaki Composite School. They were in a bind. And last year, J.C. Small, 2 other police, myself, Rondell Fields, went into that school. Because what the principal and the counselor was saying is that part of the violence there had to deal with children of incarcerated fathers. Now, I haven't heard anything about incarcerated fathers on any party's platform. And it appears to me that the things that matter most, never reach the election platform. Never reach. And, you know, we went in there, and thank God, they made a video recently, spontaneously, because kids came to us and said, we want to change. We want to do better. You know, yes, we vexed because our father in jail, and we ain't too like the stepfather. Family again, but we want to do better. And you must have seen the video where they were singing in a very dynamic fashion a particular hymn, and they filmed it. All right. Now, what I find with mainstream media, they pick it up when it have crime, when it have violence and guns being exposed, but they never picked up that. Like that too positive for the media. You know, if the school continued gang violence and thing, no problem, they will highlight that. If they had a gang fight in the school, highlight that. But that positive thing the children did in the same school, which have a kind of bad reputation, they didn't highlight that. So the media has a role to play.
Right. Well, I take some blows for my colleagues and the institutions I belong to. But clearly, we here at New Radio TT understand the importance of highlighting these matters, and so we are here talking about it. The schools, and Dominic Dos Santos worked in schools, worked in the Ministry of Education. There's a kind of culture there in some of the schools. We see it all the time. The videos, the fights, the gangs ganging up. You see 10, 15 boys and girls, and it seems to me that the girls are as I don't know, as vicious as the boys can be in terms of these fights and so on. How do you tackle the culture, that culture of violence in the schools? It seems as if it's almost something that makes them come alive. They're happy. They want to fight each other in the worst kinds of possible ways. How do we begin to counter that school culture of violence?
I think one of the things that really jumps out at us, you know, even in this discussion, is if fathers were to really take and own responsibility for their children, it can lead to recreating the culture in the school environment. In a school in San Fernando here, I don't want to call the school's name, but when I was in the system, what we did, we got fathers together. And the school social worker at the time, a good friend of mine, I don't want to call names either as well, but he designed a simple thing and got paint where the father put his hand in the paint and rest it on his jersey, and then the child dip in a different color and put his hand in the father's hand. And it was amazing to see the response. We had that day maybe about 300 fathers. And it wasn't even Father's Day. It was that the fathers came in the school environment, took the children. All the mother had to do was to not do nothing that day. The mothers have no responsibility that day. She didn't have to prepare meals for the child. She didn't have to bathe the child. She didn't have to bring the child to school. All we asked the fathers to do is you take that responsibility that day. And it was amazing to see in the school what was happening in the interaction. There were no fights that day. There were nothing, no rebellion or anything, because the fathers were present. In another school, and I will call this school in this case, in Bonaventure, the principal sat down and he said, well, what could we do? And lunchtime was a time that had a lot of fights and a lot of children cursing really, really bad. So we took the prefects and we asked the prefects, what is your responsibility? And this is a primary school. And in the primary school, they were saying that they were looking for children that breaking the rules. They were looking for children that were dressed in the wrong school uniform. They were looking for, children that were defiant. And the funny thing is, I asked them, if you look for something else, could we highlight that? And so Pastor Dutton was on the ball just now when he said that the media plays a significant role. And they were confused when I asked the question. I said, well, okay, here's what I want us to do. I want us to walk around the school lunchtime, and all the children that have on the right uniform, I want you to stop and get everybody's attention and highlight this pupil. If you see a child dropping something in the bin, I want you to run across there and highlight this pupil and say, hey, this guy dropped something in the bin. Let's celebrate the good news. If you see a child in the correct uniform, celebrate. If you see a child doing something right, celebrate. Suddenly, Tony, in 2 days, lunchtime became a celebration of what is right. And the reason is, whatever the brain focuses on, that is what it is going to get. So if we focus on the wrongdoings in the school, the fella that's doing right, nobody paying attention to him, he gets no applause, he gets no acknowledgement. But what happened in that school is when the prefects started to look for what is good, suddenly lunchtime was a time of goodness. Eventually we had to introduce hopscotch. We had to introduce moral. Those were games we used to play, remember? Scooch and all became something so much so that we introduced a small goal match in the school. And the teachers themselves got involved. In fact, the students tell the teachers, all they able with we, all they can't beat we. And the teachers played one day, they played a group of students, and suddenly it was mass in the school because them students put a good licking on the teachers. And the thing is, all of a sudden, the focus changed from rebellion into something that was right. And so looking for good rather than looking for the student that rebellious and suffering with all kinds of problems and difficulty home. Even some of those students were playing football to the hilt. They were playing cricket top notch. They were doing things at lunchtime that got the prefect's attention. Here's what the principal did. He buy a bunch of whistles for all the prefects. So lunchtime, you were hearing the whistles blowing because people were doing what was right. And I think if we get down to, so fathers on one level, but bring it down to the students themselves, if the students themselves could be celebrated, that is the students that are doing well, celebrate them, not just in graduation, but on a regular basis, and highlighting those pupils, man, we could spin this thing around. I was in Cayman Islands the other day, about a year ago, and what I saw was so interesting. I said, what? They actually were putting up public billboards of students that were excelling, of course, with their parents' approval. Students that were excelling in the school environment, they were the billboards going up all over the place. Even in Grenada, I was there just about 2 weeks ago. And within the community, Marian community, the community center became a lively place when they started to mentor children in the community. And my first interaction was with a bunch of mentors, and they were busy searching for people that are doing good. And that is exactly where the youth doing wrong finds his crown, because somewhere Facebook will highlight him, or some media will highlight this particular student. And come on, we could do this, Tony. We could spin this around. And Pastor Dutton is on target with it as well. One day I was in prison and maximum security, and we stood in a circle. And Tony, in that circle, had a grandfather, a father, and a son. 3 generations stand up in the same circle. Why? Because they have developed patterns, and these children are receiving these patterns and perfecting these patterns of crime. We can interrupt those patterns if we give our children good patterns to look at and good patterns to copy. So I believe that the gangs and all of that kind of stuff is formed when the powerless connects with the manipulative. If we look carefully, a lot of children who are heading towards the gangs, they feel themselves powerless, even in their own homes. They are powerless. And here comes a manipulator coming along and empowering them to feel the sense of worth, the sense of value. So in prison, they're counting ghosts. How much ghosts you have on your list? How much gold chain I have as compared to how much you have? How much bullet wounds I have compared to how much you have? And a bunch of silly comparisons stimulating the whole idea of violence and gang warfare.
Yes. Pastor Dutton, your response to all of that?
I agree completely. I just want to add something simple in the limited time that we have. What I want to say
we have plenty time. Don't worry, we have plenty time.
What I want to say is that there is a horrible assumption that you two involved in crime and in gangs do not wish to change. That is nailing us to the cross.
That's true.
And the guy who was shot in his right eye, well, he ended up in Montegran. You know Montegran in Tunapuna, by the back of the market and thing there.
Yeah. You seem to have lost your audio for a moment there, Pastor. Okay, you're back now. We lost your audio for a moment.
Yes, what I'm saying is sometimes there's some hotspots that produce the assassins, as Dr. Dominic said, going from one generation to the next. But I feel one of the things we have to knock out, and the media has to help us in a big way here, is to knock out the assumption that all the young people in gangs, that's how they want to live the rest of their life. Now, I must tell you, I saved a girl from a gang leader in central Trinidad. And it was by God's providence, because I was going to that church in Curab, which is a hotspot by itself. And she came that same evening, and it was providential. So that a guy who was a theology student from USC met her and tell her, she looked lost. You want to go somewhere? Come go to church. I have a fellow called Dutton talking there this evening. She said, all right, I don't know him, but I hear about him. So she came in there. So I dealt with the issue of the church and saving youth and wrong assumptions of young people till we label them negative. If you label them negative, they will perform negatively. That's called the self-fulfillment prophecy. And I interviewed her after. She said, Pastor, nobody wants me. This is a real pretty girl. She said, nobody wants me. I'm with a guy. He's a killer. He's a gang leader. You know what she told me? She said, Pastor, this guy tell me one day, don't think of leaving me, you know. Because you see me, I am a gang leader. I'm working for myself. I ain't going to work for nobody else. And I will die this way. She told me that. And of course, he told her, the day you see you leave here, you dead. You just dead. You can't leave me. Both of us going down together. So I asked her, what about her parents? She said, her parents said they ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole. The parents told her, you are not our daughter. You are not our daughter. You can't come home at all. All of us in danger. I said, okay, if you had to choose one family member, who you would choose? Now all is taking time, huh? Because this is no fix within 24 hours. That's the other assumption. People want us to wave a magic wand. I hear people saying, what the new government doing already? You know what I mean? People have this idea as a short-term fix. It takes effort. It takes sacrifice. Well, I tell you what happened. She told me if she had to confide in one person, will be an uncle. So in the ensuing week, I got onto the uncle. I said, your niece in danger, you know, and the parents don't want them. And you should know that the parents related to you do not want them. I say, unless you take that girl, she will die. Because the police coming after that guy. She will be a figure. He said, okay, Pastor, let me give her 6 months in my home. And that was the end of that. Through some effort, you know what I mean? And I think sometimes people want a quick fix from the state, from the church, even from the home. But where this thing reached now, this thing is like 50 years old. Generation, at least 3.5 generations created the mess we have right now. And it takes effort. We have to train boots on the ground too. We don't have enough boots on the ground. When I say boots on the ground, boots in the hotspot. Boots who will pull young people out. Boots that will even tell them, let me try church a day. All right? Well, let me, as Dominic said, let us try, the old time way. Let us make an effort. Because I am saying more young people want to change than you have young people who don't want to change. More young people want to change and be positive than those who don't want. Like that girl, you know what I mean? A little effort. It took a couple of weeks, but we brought her out of the gang story. So that I am saying we have to keep making the effort. And I find we in the church, and I'm so negative, we talk in God, but we don't really put it into action. So you can talk God. What we mean when we talk God is pray about it. Pray about it. But we don't want to get our hands dirty. That is the issue. And we don't want a bullet to pass too close to the whisk past the ears. And I'm saying we have to go in there and make a difference. All right? Life or death. Go in there and make a difference.
Okay. So we are talking about young people and violence and so on. This, of course, does not mean that young people are the only ones who are involved in criminal activities, as I think Pastor Dottin indicated earlier on, that the suppliers, the investors, the people who organize trade in guns and ganja and whatever else are people who are outside here instigating this kind of activity, and sometimes no focus is being put on them. So we are talking with Pastor Clive Dottin, somebody known to be involved in young people activities, attempting to drag young people back from the brink. And we also have Dr. Dominic Dos Santos, who is himself worked in the Ministry of Education at one point in time and very much involved in all of these young people matters. A moment ago, both Dr. Dos Santos and Pastor Dottin hinted at something about, and I would call it the sex drive. Young people being driven away into sexual activities which they can't control, which overpower them, and which has a lot of things added to it. It's not only sex, it is all the associations with sex and so on. Now, I don't want to be preaching, a cleansing gospel. I leave that for Pastor Dottin to do. But clearly, this business of sex plays a significant role in all of the criminal activities. Young women, I think you were mentioning a young woman getting involved with a gang leader and what goes on there, and she can't turn her back on it and so on, and she's dragged in to that kind of thing. How important a role, starting with Dr. Dos Santos, how important a role is sex involved in the criminal activities?
When we go back to the genesis of the thing, the percentage of children that are exposed has a correlation to absent fathers. The home that is not guided by a godly man contributes significantly to a rise in teenage pregnancy and the like. So again, we're coming back to what the home has to offer. At the Church of Christ, where I am, we are trying on a daily basis to promote the stability of the home, minus the father. And this is not new, and Pastor Dottin would agree with me, in the sense that you'd remember in the times when Israel was in bondage to Egypt, they tried to get rid of the males in order to stabilize the society. Coming to the time of Jesus, because the Caesar at the time wanted to get rid of any competition, he eliminated all the young males under 2 years. And so you would find that a society that eliminates the male will become increasingly promiscuous. They will become increasingly defiant to rules and regulations and guidelines. And within our society, the absent father factor is high. It's critical. And what we have to take into consideration is that with that, sexual immorality multiplies as well. Why? Because you have young girls who are looking for that father figure. They're seeking that father figure. And there are men who are outside there looking for that younger girl, that person that they are grooming, that person that they are preparing for their own sexual desires. And it is going right back to the home. So we had to try. We had to try and not throw our hands up in the air and say, oh God, look what happened. No, we had to actively get ourselves in place to see the difference. Portugal, for example, to me is an amazing example. I think it was about in 2021, they changed the law. They adjusted the law. They legalized drugs. They opened up the system and say, here is what. We are not going to be spending money on running down drug lords. We are not going to be spending money on running down prostitutes. We are not. If that's what you want to do, go ahead. And amazingly, what the government of the day in Portugal did, they decided to spend money on family development, maintaining structured homes, supporting fathers. So from the political standpoint, the government of that day was saying, here is what, we are going to focus on this. So when Pastor Dutton mentioned just now that if the government decides to get into and really support the church in its effort in trying to stabilize families, in its effort trying to stabilize schools, the school environment, and so on, what we will actually see in Trinidad is a reduction of that kind of promiscuous behavior, because now young girls will have a symbol to work with, a pattern that they could emulate. And then our young men as well, if fathers are more settled, our young men could now look for a pattern. But guess what? Minus that pattern, again, the drug lord, the gang leader, the person in the area that is a sugar daddy, they are going to form the patterns. And once a pattern is formed in a person's brain, guess what? They're going to follow that pattern. So it is critical that we start developing, the fathers start developing, and what I say, even before they become fathers, focus on young men. Really train the young men to become more responsible, to become more mentally stable in their operation. And we could see a turnaround in this country and in this region. We could see a significant turnaround. An amazing thing, I said I was in Grenada just the other day. An amazing thing is happening in Grenada. The young ladies in Grenada, they are leaning towards the older men. Why? Because they want stability. They're looking for stability. The problem now that they're having is that some of the older men that they're leaning towards don't have the personal training and the personal standards and morals and etiquette in a way that to really guide these younger girls. So they gain another problem. Yeah. And I'm saying we could beat it if we train some of the young men to really develop morals and mores that could guide them appropriately.
Pastor Dottin,
yes,
has sex been, I don't know, brandished abroad as a kind of, without the attending morality to it, without the attending responsibility that people get into sexual relationships require?
Well, I am dealing with youth all my life. So what I see, let's deal with all the woods: Hollywood, Bollywood, Nollywood. You know, Nollywood is the Nigerian media empire, and Bollywood is the India. And what I notice is that all of them synchronizing in. And sex is sex without trust and respect. Now, Bollywood has allowed for a long time, but I see they getting involved in the action. I think Nollywood is the worst, because when I look at the Nollywood reels, what I see, I mean, and I was hoping black experts would talk about this, who always talking about reparation and all kind of thing. But what I see is that they paint girls as sexual tools, and as the models, all right, they present. So all three of the Hollywood of the media empire, the film producing empires, are going in one direction, where you could have sex without trust and respect. So you don't need trust and respect. All right, that is where a lot of it is going. Of course, Nollywood has brought in the culture of the pagan, the obeah man, and that kind of thing to play a role in the thing. Now, what I want to see on this issue is the research. When I went in Canada in 1998, a pastor introduced me to Blanchard's research on three kinds of family. One, and the impact of sex on the model of the family. The first one was family model A, mother and father married. The second one was mother and stepfather. And the third one was mother and no father at all. And you know what the research was showing? That puberty descended, all right, on the girl child, all right, earlier in model B and model C. What shocked me is that model B and model C is where you have no father at all. Model B is when you have the stepfather and the mother. Didn't show much of a difference. So when we're talking about sex, you're talking about Berbice, Guyana, where the gangs there, I worked in that area for 6 weeks. And what happened is that the gang leaders, and I come back to the gangs, would tell the boys, you can't have sex with the girls in the gang. Right? They could have sex with another boy. Now that has deep prophetic implications. Because the good book in Romans 1 is clear on that. Clear on that. But in the last days, that's where the world will go, whether we want to accept the good book or not. But in the last days, that's where it will go. So you have a number of factors there. I think sex is still a taboo subject in the church. When I say the church, I mean Christendom across the board. I found it a very much a taboo among the Hindu religion in a big way. Not so much so with Islam. So what I am saying is we have to remove that taboo feeling from the whole thing. And then we have got to look at the family and how family trust and loyalty, all right, impacts positively on the issue of puberty. Because all the research, and there's secular research, there's not religious research, all are showing that when the father doesn't play a role, puberty comes on earlier and the girl becomes more promiscuous when she doesn't have a role model father within the family.
So we have to teach some lessons to father. Yes, Dominic?
Yes, agreed. And that has to start before they become fathers. It has to actually start. That those lessons need to start before they become fathers.
Right, good, okay, excellent, yes.
Yes. Because if the home does not have the pattern of leadership, then somewhere along the line, somebody has to provide it. And again, I'm coming back to the church. The church has to step up on its role. And I have to say that I know that there are churches that are really, really trying and pushing and encouraging and trying to make a difference, but it is difficult. They can't do it alone. And we have to be able to pull together somewhere, somehow, and allow that kind of spiritual education and that spiritual training to take place, so that if the home is missing it, they could find a place where it is provided. and become those mentors and become those role models for our young men. And I've come across a number of really good young men who are just trying to do the right thing, trying to do, the good thing, and found them in the church environment as well. The other day I was in a funeral situation and met a Baptist woman who said to me, when she saw the amount of young men taking the lead, she was celebrating, and she said, wow, long I see some young men. One young man was leading the singing for the worship time, and another young man was speaking, and another young man was praying, and she celebrated. She hugged me up and said, long I see some young men do this kind of thing. Some years ago, I hosted a boot camp for young men in the Church of Christ in San Fernando, and it was amazing. And some of these young men today are walking upright, talking upright, doing the right thing, and they don't mind being against and stuff. They don't mind being laughed at. They don't mind being rejected by other people. They have a stable minds that are saying, I am willing to do the right thing, even if nobody else is around. So we can do it. And again, we need to highlight some of those young men that are doing the right thing and help them to realize, hey, we could applaud you, we could celebrate you for doing the right thing.
Tony,
yeah, sure. Go ahead,
I
Pastor.
just want to say something. Before you had 6 and 7, you had Rasta City and ISIS, right? Before ISIS and Rasta City, you had the importation of 2 gang models, Crips and Bloods. Remember that? That came straight, they say when America cough, we just sneeze. That came straight from the American culture. Well, I went to Barbados, and I went to a top school in Barbados. Now, the rumor is that Barbados used to have a way of covering up its stuff because they want to hurt the tourist market. But I had warned Barbados more than 20 years ago when I went to the schools that what is taking place today would one day take place if we don't deal with the issue of cocaine and ganja in the secondary schools. Because what I found in Barbados in 2001 was that in a particular school, I found the guys in Form 4 and 5 had lots of foreign exchange and cocaine. They worked hand in hand, and we tried to break that. But sometimes the government feel if we listen to a pastor, they're making a mistake. He's a calamity howler. And by the way, just how we had to change our perception that all young people want to be bad. We had to change the perception that all pastors are irrelevant, because if we have to pull together, all right, we have to look at that. But I saw something in a secondary school where we knocked out Crips and Blood, all right? And the guy who was responsible was a head prefect, all right? And when they called me to speak, I wanted to have a look at him. So the principal went there and told them from the day, things changed. No more Crips and no more Blood, right? Bloods, they call them. And the principal asked the prefect, by the way, was a Christian. He's actually a member of one of my churches there. And he stood up by the principal and says, I am standing by the principal. So what Dominic said about lots of great young men, we have a lot of young people willing to take a stand. But sometimes parents don't feel their young people should sacrifice and take a stand against the gang element. And our guy stood up there and he said, I'm with the principal. And then he tell the rest of the young men, all of you standing by the principal to rid us of Crips and Blood. Now, the young guy, he was a sixth former and he was the head prefect. His speech was more impacting than the principal because he's young. You understand? That's the first thing. He's a role model, all right? And he told the young fellas, I, for one, I prefer to die than see the school go down. That's a young man, 18 years old, making that statement. He said, I prefer to die than see the school go down. And that school has turned around 360. And I mentioned Tabaki just now, and Dr. Dominic mentioned some of the schools that he has had a positive impact on. So what I am saying is, the time has come for Trinidad and Tobago to unite across lines of religion, all right? Don't follow the politicians. What divides us in politics mustn't divide us in community response and responsibility. And we have to be serious about that. And I mustn't see Dominic as a Church of Christ. I must see him as a human being who has a passion that I have. So although we may belong to different religions, we have a passion to save the country. And by the way, I have to leave at 5:30, I should tell you, but we are always stronger together. I want to emphasize that. We are always stronger together.
Right. Pastor Dottin, more so that you have to leave in a while. We talked a lot about the students. We talked a lot about parenting. What about teachers who often face the full force of young people engaged in criminal activities and young people who are not afraid of teachers anymore? When I was a boy in school and you're doing something wrong and you hear the teacher come in, well, you're done with that, but now is when you do it in front of the teacher. How are we going to, or are teachers sufficiently trained and nurtured to deal with that kind of young people activity? Pastor Dottin.
Let me tell you what a principal told me in St. Lucia today. I spent 2 hours in the school. She said, Pastor, being trained for this. When coming to gangs and mediation, being trained for that. It reminds me of a police in South Trinidad who had sold out completely to the drug mafia in that part of the country. I talk about recent stuff here, and he organized a roadblock and targeted the guy who drove me down there. Because I wouldn't agree that a girl who just had a child for a drug lord, all right, should go back to the drug lord. She decided she would beat her with a cutlass, and she decided she would stay away from him. And he had, by the way, a police and a soldier guarding him. You hear what I'm telling you? And that whole station was totally compromised. So I am saying to all of us right now, all right, where we are, that we ourselves have to be role models. If the church has to be a role model, but then the pastors have to be role models, the pundits have to be role models, and the imams, because we have those 3 major religions in this society. We have to be role models. Secondly, there is a Pentecostal pastor who did something similar to what Dr. Dominic mentioned in California, in a terrible place. I know the place, San Luis Obispo County. Did a real earth-shaking thing. You know what he said? He told all his retired men, all right, join me every lunchtime in 6 schools. All right? They had gang violence in 6 schools. He said, you join me. We will just position ourselves on the school compound at lunchtime. Because why lunchtime? That's when they were available. And why lunchtime? Because the fights were taking place at lunchtime. And eventually, the parent-teacher associations, which I think is an underutilized, Dr. Dominic, I think is an underutilized. Because PTAs, you have Catholics, Baptists, Seventh-days, you have everybody. Unless it's a totally religious school for one religion. But he told them, let's go at midday, at lunchtime, and let us just plant ourselves there. We ain't interfering. If we see a fight, we part it. And in 6 months' time, he reduced gang violence using retired men, all right, in 6 months, in those 6 schools. So I support Dr. Dominic fully if we have a positive mindset, if we have a heart for the young people. And by the way, let me just say this, sir. We have too much fake people in this society. Young people know those who are genuinely concerned about them. You can't fool them. Young people know those who are genuinely concerned about them. And I am saying to all of us here that we have to tap into the genuine people. We don't use retired people enough, all right, who don't want to exploit the state. And I'm saying we can turn it around. It will not happen next month. It may not even happen December coming year, or maybe late next year. But everybody, I mentioned Patrick Manning, because to my mind, his idea of saving the nation through paid RI teachers is the way to go. Manning said that. Manning at Keller at the University Department of Education. And he used him to craft a plan. And Manning said, listen, too many churches are not represented in schools. And he felt the reason why they could not afford it, they had to travel, they got no help from the state. And he said, listen, let's launch a massive training program for RI teachers from every religion. And we will pay them a stipend at the end of the month. And we'll professionalize the RI period rather than just a kind of guessing game sometimes. And some RI teachers not so responsible. He said we will formalize it and we'll professionalize it. And out of all the prime ministers we have had, I think the guy who had the best plan for making it very official and consistent was Patrick Manning and the educator in UWI, Keller. All right?
Yeah.
Where they talk about training to reach specific issues in the school. Training,
Yeah.
even of volunteers.
Yeah, Pastor, how do we equip and in a way protect the teachers who are on the front lines? You hear certain schools, fights have been, going on, teachers are beaten or scared away from the action, they're not
Correct.
staying there. How do we start to protect
Well, let me
teachers
tell
in
you,
these situations?
Tony, one of the problems, when I was teaching primary school, I remember the government said, if the teachers know about abuse, they must be the one to report it. But in this society, once you are a witness, you are dead. So they put too much, so we must not legally put that kind of load on the teachers. All right? If we have a police station in every area, let them report there. But I feel, all right, I could understand a teacher being asked to inform the parent of a delinquent child, a child who's delinquent because like the father sexually abusing them, etc., etc. I could understand that. But I wouldn't want to tell teachers to go to police stations to report an against, because you're compromising the integrity and security. I also feel that some of those wardens here are doing traffic, managing traffic. I feel we could have volunteers, whatever you call them, in the schools in terms of security. Because what teachers have to face, I didn't have to face in my time. Teachers have to face violent men, young men who tell them if you report to the police, I'll kill you. That is what teachers have to face. And that is why teachers are scared. Let me give you one quick example, and I'll have to leave in a few minutes. I went to the school I used to teach science in, Barrett, I ran North Secondary. And a pastor's wife, by the way, when you go to these secondary schools, the teachers we have now who choose to remain in teaching are as small physically as the students, In fact, you have students bigger than them, students who intimidate them. All right? So I went to talk to the young people Form 2 about making decisions. And I heard a loud song banging against the door. Right? So I asked the teacher what's going on. She said, those are the bandits in the school. All right? What they're doing. Now, I had stopped teaching. I was into full ministry. She said, those are the bandits in the school. Some of them armed. I said, so that is when they want to get in and stop something. She said, yes, they want to stop this program. It's a program to empower you. They want to stop it. And she was a pretty big teacher. She said, I ain't touching that. You could decide if you go home now and cut this program, I won't be vexed with you, or you confront them guys. I say, yes, I'm going to confront them. Now, this is a rather unorthodox method. I'm not recommending it to anybody. But I opened the door. I said, let me ask you a question. Supposing I have a gun in my pocket, right? And you continue behaving like that. What do you expect of me? Now, they belong to the class, but they may not attend no class. I say, so what do you think will happen? They say, well, something bad could happen to us. I say, all right. I have no gun. Come inside here one time. But I done meld them fellas. And they watch at me and they see I have terrorist DNA in me. You understand? They see that I have terrorist DNA in me. Them fellas come in softly and sit down there. I say, look at your teacher. I say, you are disrespecting your teacher. I say, you have a mother? You all have a mother? If your mother was teaching in an next school, you want the fellas in the school like you to terrorize your mother? I said, let me ask you a question. What you would do if somebody in another school terrorized your mother who was a teacher? They say, Pastor, we'll kill them. I say, exactly, but you're doing the same thing to this teacher. So what you want for your mother, what you want for your sister, you must want for this teacher. The teacher reported to me after that one encounter, there was change from a lot of those guys. So I am saying, we have to be brave in this thing. There's no easy, quick fix. It will not happen. I agree, Dr. Dominic. It will not happen overnight. But governments and the church and the school and the home must pull together to make a difference. Because it calls for a massive volunteerism program I must tell you. We need to have a massive volunteerism program because we have several schools and several schools are hurt. I have to go, you know.
Pastor Clive Doughton, thank you very much for participating. And we free you now to go to your other responsibilities, but I'm sure I'll come knocking at your door sometime soon in the future. Thanks again for participating.
Dr. Dominic, it's great to meet you. Hope we meet in person sometime.
Looking forward.
God bless you.
Same to you.
All right, so we continue the discussion. We have left with us Dr. Dominic Dos Santos, who has indicated his involvement in the Ministry of Education, involvement in schools, involvement in, I suppose, disciplining or creating. I know you haven't been on the floor yourself, but creating programs, developing methods, and so on. Is there hope in your mind that some of these things will begin working? Because it seems as if we are going deeper and deeper into the difficulties of the present.
Well, yes, there is hope because alongside the church, I think there are these youth organizations, starting with the Boy Scouts. You could get Girl Guides a little older, even the Cadet Force. These are organizations that I believe could make a significant dent in the kind of delinquents and things that is happening in the country.
How much involved are these institutions? Of course, I haven't been in a school in 75 years. How involved are cadets and scouts and girl guides and so on, those institutions? Are they still alive?
Yeah, many of them are still alive. I do have friends still in the Cadet Force that are very, very active and doing their part. And it works. You are seeing a difference among the young people. The other day was in, Corinth. And in a school, and there were some young cadets there. And I saw them, walked up to them, introduced myself, and commended them. Because they were the ones guiding the program for the day. They had some training or something to do that day, and they were actively involved, and the students were responding to them. And you could see their leadership as they walked in. You saw a difference, and I couldn't help myself but walk across and commend them. And I'm saying, these, alongside the family and all of that, youth organizations could play a very significant part in changing the tone of the country and changing the culture. And I think a wise government will invest in young people, invest in their lives in a meaningful way. And it could go a very, very long way in changing the kind of gang violence and situations that are developing.
Okay, but I stopped you from making a point. I hope I haven't thrown you off completely. You want to go back to what you were saying?
I was about to say exactly what I just said. I was about to say that the youth organizations in the country could contribute towards that. But alongside that, I think elements like the student support services within the Ministry of Education, that element alone is critical. The other day I was speaking to a social worker who I believe, let me see how this process went. They had new openings for social workers, and the actual social workers that were doing the job were refused from even applying, and not just applying, but they were not hired again into the turnover. And I'm saying, come on, you're playing with children's lives, because there are children in schools that latched on to the social workers, and suddenly now the social worker is gone. So my daddy gone, my mommy gone, the social worker in school is gone, the teacher, I can't really relate to the teacher because the teacher is in a different domain trying to educate me. So who do I really have? So when you take that broader look, a more sociological perspective and so on, I think a wise government will invest in things like the student support services, invest in that, get a social worker for each school, get a guidance counselor for each school. I'm familiar because I was in the system as well as a guidance counselor. And listen, you have about 5 schools to go to. So a child that see you Monday wouldn't see you until the following Monday, you know? And so you would find that becomes very difficult to maintain. So if a school had a social worker and a guidance counselor on on the firm and on the plant, then they could provide a more constant environment for the development and support of the child. I was in a principal's conference about a couple months ago, and it was amazing to hear principals stand up and say, not on my watch. Our teachers are protected by me. And that was so encouraging because I knew that there are teachers who feel the principal not standing up for them, or the principal not there with them, or the principal not even involved in a way that will help them to stand even stronger. And it was encouraging. And this was a school in Port of Spain. Not Port of Spain, Central Trinidad. And he was saying, on my watch, I am standing with my teachers. They are the ones that are making the difference, and I will protect them and be there for them. And that is an awesome position taken by a principal. And I'm saying we could do it. We could turn around this place in a short, well, as Pastor Dutton said, it wouldn't be a short time, but it can be done. And if we really rally together and make a difference, we will be able to conquer this thing on a better level.
We talked a moment ago, Dr. Dos Santos, about the guidance counselors, etc., the social workers in schools. Sometimes, and in some schools, there is an advocacy for strong arm tactics, meaning you have a policeman by the door, or the security guard has a gun in his waist, and so on. Is that effective at all?
No. Children learn from people they love, and there's a power in relationships. When relationships are developed right, a child will feel that sense of safety. And that's why I say the gang man, he know very well that when he build a good relationship with a youth, he have him for life. And so the truth is, proper relationships in the home, proper relationships in the school environment, we can turn it around. So the heavy hand and the high hand thing and the muscle, that is not realistic. What will happen with a youth who realizes that this person has more muscle? I start checking to see where he lives. I start to check to see what weakness he has, and I'll attack it. But relationships, children learn in relationships. And if we establish better relationships, so the question about the fathers coming into the school and providing an atmosphere of safety, it's amazing. It will work. And there are schools in the US that have done it, and they call it what, dads on duty. Fathers volunteer and come into school at lunchtime, and they're walking around. All of them have on a high collar vest or something like that. And the students, because some of the students are the pupils or the children of these fathers, they behave. And it's amazing. We could turn this around in a blink. And so it might be a short blink or a long blink if you want, but it can happen.
Yes.
If we have more fathers around, more parents involved, instead of raising funds alone, they could raise standards in the school. A lot of parenting groups or PTA groups, they're busy trying to raise funds. And I said, but the last PTA, national PTA president, I happen to know personally, and she was promoting and encouraging that kind of thing. So she's saying here, don't let us just raise funds. Let's raise the standards. Let's raise relationships in the school environment. And we could see a turnaround with this. So PTAs, unfortunately, they're busy raising funds, trying to get the school going. But if they get a little more involved and start raising standards in the school environment, Tony, we could turn this thing around and have a better Trinidad and Tobago.
There is a view, Dr. Dos Santos, that you have a multitude of female teachers. And I have to be careful about saying this. My wife was a female teacher. And so, but she herself sometimes notes that, the absence of a male figure in schools, even girls' schools. And she relates issues about, she taught in a girls' school, one of the prestigious Catholic schools. And she talked even of when a male teacher came into the girls, apart from being attracted to a male figure, not in any kind of vulgar way, it made a difference. Over the decades, really, teaching has become a female occupation. And as I said, I'm not knocking females. I'm just saying that we seem to have gone way over on the other side.
Correct. Remember I mentioned earlier on the eradication of the male in the Egyptian society, even in the time of Christ. And that continues to happen. So a young man growing up has a female as a model. What is going on around us is exactly that, where the young men are not getting role models, strong men to follow. So in the school environment, in nursery school, female teachers. I go to primary school, female teachers. Unfortunately, when I go into the secondary school, guess what? It's the same female teachers as well. And when I'm looking for a job, a female boss. So the male is being challenged. And so what is going on? The only place that he seems to be able to develop an identity is when I join the gang, which is sad. So here is a call for men. Here's a call for men. And you are right. We've been careful about mentioning it, but it is no disrespect at all for females. What we're saying is we need more men to rise up in the church environment, in the school environment, in the community environment, everywhere. We need more men to rise up and take that kind of leadership. And so you are on target with it. Even the student support services dominated by females, and it is sad. It is very, very sad. But at the same time, we could start pushing some men and grooming men to take up that responsibility, to take up more. One of the things, for example, in nursery schools, if the salaries were more attractive, maybe men might want to get involved. I've known there's a nursery school near my house, and I know that there's one male teacher, and he's kind of flustered because all of these women are around me, and I can't be the man that I want to be. So he's pushing, and he's really trying in a nursery school. And the other day I hugged him up and commended him and said, boy, you are walking into an environment that is female dominated and you're doing well. He smiled and said, thank you, sir. And so the thing is, we need more men in our nursery schools. We need more men in our primary schools. We need more men in secondary schools and all the way through the universities as well. We need more men to rise up. And that is why I told you on the phone, and I'm going to say it now publicly, that I, as a young man, know you growing up. And in my head, you were an extremely significant example of a good man. So for me, participating in this environment now, finding a good man that I know was a journalist, because you were always level-headed in your delivery, you were level-headed in how you presented yourself. And now to come and see the gray hairs, I have to give you honor. And I'm giving you that honor publicly because you are a great example among many of us.
Thank you, sir. But a thought hit my mind, though, is that what has happened in the wider society is a moving up of females in the economic and pecking order. And men, I
Yes.
don't know what has happened. I haven't studied it and thought about it directly. Men have moved out of the jobs where teachers are. I don't know what teacher salaries are like compared to other kinds of efforts, perhaps technical, people who are mechanics and those kinds of technical jobs who are earning more than being a teacher. So they are leaving behind as males move forward. Sometimes that is in question whether they're moving forward or not. But certainly aiming for jobs with greater salary increases than at the level of teachers, so that teachers are left, females are left holding the bag, as it were.
Yes.
Consideration must surely be given to that.
And I think so. I agree with that, because if we could get more men in the school environment, I think we will begin to see, and this is no offense to the women, no discrimination and all of that, but I'm saying a male leadership is so critical, and the research is there that minus the father factor, you have a lot of social problems, lots of social problems. So if we could get some more men back into the school environment, it would do an amazing thing. And now we have men who are struggling with their identity from a sexual standpoint. I was talking to a friend of mine in the San Fernando General Hospital about a couple of years ago, and she was saying they're having problems with young men coming into casualty with problems with their scrotum. And the problem is that they're wearing all of these tight pants. And I wonder, is it that they're borrowing the sister clothes? Is it that they so want to identify not as a male, but as a female, that they are dressing like that and squeezing up the family jewels? So guess what? When they end up in the hospital, now they're having difficulties. And if they don't understand that from a psychological standpoint, the spin-off on a biological standpoint is also real, because that restriction is going to restrict sperm production. It is going to restrict the capacity for erection, so that it will affect things further down the road. We have to stimulate our men. We have to get behind our men and get men rising up to make a big difference in our country. And it can happen. And I'm looking forward to see what is going to happen. Now we have a female president, a female prime minister, and a female leader of the opposition. And I'm not criticizing them, nor questioning their competence. I'm saying that we need more men to act as mentors, to be encouragers, to be models, so that our young men will stand up and follow suit.
Okay. As we come out of the discussion, we just have a few more minutes. What of the school curriculum? Is it favoring? You hear a lot of talk about young people dropping out of school because the curriculum means nothing to them. It's either purely academic, or it doesn't provide a place from them to jump off into a job. Is the school curriculum part of what has to be reorganized for young people to come forward in a significant way?
I think so. Recently, I was looking at this African country, Burkina Faso, and it is amazing to see what the present president is doing. He's really attacking the education system and realize that what they have learned for so many years coming out of French colonization, they have to learn more things that are practical, things that are relevant to the development of this new Burkina Faso identity. And I'm thinking, all through the Caribbean, we need to do the same. We need to find ways and means to develop our young people, the next generation, in terms of what is relevant and education that is relevant. And I was listening to, I think it was Darren Shepherd just recently, and he was saying, could you imagine that in the school system, we're still learning the recorder for music, but pan is our national instrument. What are we doing? What exactly are we doing when we're teaching children to learn music on a recorder when the pan is available? And I've gone to some schools and the pan room is dark. It is not air conditioned. It is not prepared for learning. But they have a room, and nobody knows what's inside that room. Nobody understands what's inside that room, but we have a recorder in our bag. And it is sad to see. The reality is that too is something that we need to take a closer look at in order to cause the kind of progress and development and the relevance that our school system needs to develop. So the church has its role, the school has its role, the curriculum, the government has its role, and we all have to play our part and play it effectively in order to create a new national pride and a new national identity to move forward.
Yeah. No, I don't want to involve you in telling tales out of school, knowing that you worked in the Ministry of Education at some point in time. But are we sufficiently conscious at the wider level of society? We are the ones, and when I say we, I mean everybody. Is the Ministry of Education, sometimes there was a period of time that it got the second highest chunk of the budget outside of national security. Is the Ministry of Education sufficiently focused on dealing and helping with this youth problem that we have?
I think more could be done. I think more emphasis needs to be placed on building the relationships in the classroom. I don't think that our teachers are supported the way they should be and they could be. So even while it is true that maybe you may not be able to raise a salary at a particular level, but I think from that standpoint, we could encourage our teachers to feel a little more honored, to feel a little more valuable in the classroom environment. I've known endless teachers, and there are many really good, solid people who are really trying their best, dedicating their time and effort. And then when they come into the classroom environment, they don't feel the same because we don't have the parents who are supporting that. We don't have the ministry that is supporting that. And so it will fall apart. So I think the ministry could do more. And I'm not just talking salary. I'm talking about involvement. I'm talking about the participation and cooperation to make things happen from a school environment. A lot more could be done. And this is not some political statement. This is not some indictment against the Ministry of Education. I'm just saying from my standpoint, a lot more could be done in terms of practical involvement of the ministry in making things happen in our school system.
One of the judgments I make on the whole education system is when I look at the results of the common entrance, what's it called now? That dates me. SEA, and the GC and the higher level and so on. And the pass rate, the failure rate is so significant. Yes, you have some bright people. I heard the chancellor of the university, professor, historian, whatever his name is, making a point that, and I think the figure, he talked about 15% of the students going into tertiary level education, and that is a disaster, according to him. So that when I look at these pass rates and failure rates in the school, and we spend so much money on it, it must be a kind of disaster that we are facing.
Again, we're coming back to the relationships that are forged, and a child will not learn from somebody they don't like.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is that there are some who have gone into teaching as a job. I gotta work. You understand? I gotta work, and that has to change. Yeah. Teachers are a unique group, and they are the ones that really touch the future. So we have to be able to sift that carefully, and we have to be able to look at ways and means that we could honor those that are real, honor those that are really in the thing with a passion, not just a job, but a real passion. I have a close friend who was a teacher. One day, a little boy and she was teaching standard 1 and infants, first year and second year. And the little boy told her about her mother. And she said, Mr. Dos Santos, I packed my books and I left. And her passion for education is tremendous.
Yeah.
But she had no choice but to walk
Get
away.
out of there.
That's right. So we have to find ways and means to get with our teachers, get with those who are in it for the passion and in it for the reality of what they're doing, and really make a difference. And so, as I said, the church plays its part, the community plays its part, and so the government has to play its part as well.
Dr. Dominic Dos Santos, thank you very much for staying with us and enlightening the national community. It's not a one-job business. I have been talking these things with generations of people, and I suppose we just have to keep doing it. Thanks a lot for being with us this afternoon.
And thank you so much for having me.
Charlo.
Definitely.
This is it,
Yes,
my friend.
yes.
What you have to illustrate all of what we've talked about via the music.
Yeah, well, I'm continuing with that particular song because I think it's exactly what we were speaking about. So thanks so much to you, and thank you very much to the guests, all of them, for being part of the Drive Time Exchange today.
From ever since time began, has been inflicted time and time and again by man against fellow man. Yet man wouldn't learn from history. It makes him more violent.